this is a little cliche, but just fascinated by Emperor Constantine and his conversion. Like, what did he see? There's all sorts of naturalistic explanations about Emperor Constantine's conversion. Cognitive scientists would say, like, what we call religion is a byproduct, in some respect, of normal brain functions. If babies are born functionally negative atheists because they cannot think of the concept of God, so they're born negative atheists, but they are born predisposed to theism because of these cognitive systems.
Andrew, it's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to come back and join us and allow me to pick your brain about a variety of things religion affiliated today. And if you are listening to this and watching this and you're thinking, I would really love to ask some religion affiliated questions, good news is you are in luck, because Andrew Mark Henry of Religion for Breakfast is rolling out a whole new thing that you can participate in, the religion department, where you can take classes, ask questions, have direct contact with experts in a variety of religious fields. And this is some of what you're coming to talk about today. And I'm just going to throw a variety of religion-related questions your way. So, Andrew, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. And you're in luck that I have a PhD in this field of religion. So we'll try to pick my brain, and we'll see how far I can go. It's a very large field.
It's a very large field, and we are very much in luck that you do have that degree. And this is part of the beauty of the beauty and the catch of the wideness of that field. Like, your work, your channel goes into all these different corners. And it touches so many people's interests. And because of that, as someone who watches your videos, right, it knocks up all these different kinds of questions that sometimes you're like, I've got a list, and maybe they're not connected, so I don't know how I stitch like a unified thing together. But you were happy to say, let's just throw a bunch of questions on the table, and we can make our way through, much like would happen, having been in religion departments before, in conversations inside, the lounge rooms of one of those places. So if I can just start at the very beginning, with a personal preference question of sorts, maybe, with all the things that you've studied, all the topics, all the practices, all the time periods, if there was one thing that, whether it's out of personal interest, academic curiosity, whatever it might be, that you could bring back or travel back in time to see how it really happened and understand it better, what's that thing that you're just like, I would love to be able to see this one?
Yeah. That's an incredibly good question. In terms of something to like witness, this is a little cliche, but just fascinated by Emperor Constantine and his conversion. Like, what did he see? Is he bullshitting? Or, there's all sorts of naturalistic explanations about Emperor Constantine's conversion. And did he see, there's this like phenomenon, atmospheric phenomenon that, like, if the ice crystals in the atmosphere hit the sunlight in just the right way, it does look kind of like a cross around the sun. So that's like one naturalistic theory. Others are just like he had a vision of some sort. People have dreams, visions. So I want to interview the guy.
Be there at the Milvian Bridge and ask the follow-up questions.
Yeah, exactly. Be at the Milvian Bridge without getting slaughtered by
without
Roman
having
legions.
To participate in the events of. I can honestly, that is not what I expected. I don't know what I expected it to be, but I don't think I would have pinned him as the person that you're like, I want to be around and talk to.
I mean, people are so cynical. They're like, oh, well, he converted for political reasons. And sure, that's probably, he was a politician. He was a Roman emperor. He seems pretty devout in from some of the sources. So like, he must have had some sort of experience. He also seems to have been pretty devoted to some sort of solar deity, and whether he was worshiping a solar deity and then equated that deity to the Christian God. I think he was a visionary kind of guy. He was the kind of guy that had dreams and visions. And I just think that's fascinating. And the fact that there has not been an HBO series, Late Rome, makes me pretty upset. Why do we have HBO Rome? Why do we have The Gladiator? We're always focusing on the first few centuries of the Roman Empire, but the 300s, the 400s, and the 500s, they need a multi-season HBO series, because my word. Yeah.
HBO, if you're listening, Andrew has some things that he can pitch you as far as interest. Can I ask why young Constantine and maybe not old Constantine? Like, why at the beginning and not at the end?
I mean, old Constantine's interesting too. I mean, that's, he's inserting himself into the various church councils and church debates. So that's interesting in and of itself, consolidating his power, the way he patronizes Christianity. that is interesting. But there's something inherently interesting about this apparent pivot that happened in his life, that seems to. I mean, the sources we have are somewhat conflicting. Like, I think we have Lactantius. The different sources say like he had some sort of vision, but then how he acted on it differs. And so that intrigues me. Like, what actually happened? What did you paint on your shield? Was it just a cross, or was it the Chi-Rho symbol? Like, there's ambiguities there. So I'm interested in the early years, but the later years are interesting too. But I also want to interview Justinian and Theodosius. Like, just like all the late Roman emperors are just fascinating figures that just get kind of ignored, even though the world they were living in was fascinating. It was a time of transformation with this rise of Christianity. Like, it's not understudied in scholarship, but it's underrepresented in pop culture, video games, movies, TV shows.
What is there a reason why you think it is? Because there does feel like, I mean, the early stuff, there's names, there's things that, yes, get a lot of attention as like just a gravitational pull. Because it feels like, yeah, there is so much interest in like the decline of things, or the erosion of systems and names that get connected with that. And yet we have this, ripe time period of that. And we don't pay any attention to it. Or maybe not you. You pay a lot of attention to it. But as far as the mass
It's a really good question. I mean, I don't know, because Constantine is such a big figure. Because my first thought would be like, oh, well, Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus are just too big and fascinating to ignore. So, of course, we have to cover them in movies. But like, Constantine is just as interesting. And people debate about him today, too. Like, the apologetic debates, and I'm a little bit befuddled by his lack of representation in media. It could be like this hangover of like the Dark Ages, like the fall of the Roman Empire. We don't really think about the Byzantine Empire as a continuation of the Roman Empire. So there might be this misunderstanding of like, oh, we're not going to cover this Dark Age in media, even though the Roman Empire was still alive and kicking in the 300s, 400s, and 500s. I don't know. It might be one of those mass appeal things where like most people know who Julius Caesar was, but Constantine might be at like 30% name recognition instead of 60% name recognition. So it could just be a market research thing. But
just if they're just going based off of the Google trends, they're like, his name is not spiking up high enough for us to care, until that one big project comes along and makes everyone suddenly care. If I can jump off of his name, he ties in, I think, rather nicely with some questions that live around him to another question that I have that, for my own interests, comes off of one of your own videos. That was a video about studies regarding cell phone data and people's self-reporting of church attendance. And some questions or difficulties that using this type of thing can present, but also what it says about individuals' self-reflections and self-reportings of their religious affiliations or participation, and something that comes up with Constantine and his truth or untruth in his conversion moment. Why is it that people sometimes, maybe let's be very kind, are less than fully truthful about their religious affiliations, about being religious, about where their participation is? And maybe why are people so skeptical as well of people's declarations of those types of affiliations?
Yeah. The study you're referencing, I forget, it was recently published within the last few years, but the study basically found that people's self-report of religious attendance, so attendance to church or synagogue or a mosque, is usually over-exaggerated. So if you say, oh, I go weekly or I go monthly, it was actually an economist, it was not a religious studies scholar, the economist looked at cell phone data, which just feels inherently creepy. I'm not 100% sure how he got the cell phone data, but it's somehow publicly available. If you have that location services button on your phone, you're being tracked by some economist of some sort. But he somehow
app sold your numbers. Yeah,
exactly. Some app sold your number to some data collecting company, and some economist, I think it was like University of Chicago or something, then purchased that data with some grant. And then he found that people over-report how often they attend religious services. It's like pretty dramatic. I forget the exact numbers, but we're talking like single-digit percentage of people actually attend church every Sunday, compared to if you look at like Pew Research, where they do self-reported surveys, it's usually in like the 15, 20, 25%. It's at a much higher rate. So it's like single digits versus like double digits discrepancy. And I think it just comes down to this, what sociologists call the social desirability bias, where if you are asked a question on a survey, you will, in kind of a knee-jerk reaction, respond in what you think is the socially desirable answer. So if you are, let's say a evangelical Christian, and it's considered good, it's good to attend services every Sunday, then you will report on the survey, oh yeah, I'm a weekly attender. But if you like really check the box, like did I go last week? Did I go the week before? Did I go the week before? You might be a monthly attender, not a weekly attender. And your cell phone data shows that. Like the study is actually pretty complex. He like identified religious, checking Google. If you go to Google Maps, some things are, if you like own a restaurant on Google Maps, you can classify it as restaurant, you can classify it an office building, and like religious buildings are classified as like religious buildings. And so he was able to like triangulate the cell phone data with location, like a geofence on Google Maps to see, are you actually going to that place on a Friday for Friday prayers for Muslims, or on a Saturday for the synagogue, or for Sunday for Christian, for like Catholic Mass, for example, and figure out, okay, we're talking like pretty low, pretty big discrepancies between the self-report and the cell phone data. And that's my theory. We see this with all sorts of things when it comes to religion. Same with atheism. Like if atheism kind of has a stigma in the United States. So if you are asked, are you an atheist? People will self-report differently than what they actually don't believe. If they don't actually believe in God, they probably in a dictionary sense are atheists, but they might check non-religious or spiritual but not religious. And so there's other studies that show that rates of atheism are actually much higher than what the surveys say, because of social desirability bias.
So there's a bit of like just an underlying problem in the way that we ask these kinds of questions and people respond to it. I can't remember, but did it have a particular group that was, let's say, the most egregious in over-reporting their own? Like, or was it just kind of a equal spread across the board that everyone had that same level of interest in reporting that kind of association, and it was just fairly spread?
Yeah, I honestly forget. It's probably been a year since I published that video, so the study's a bit hazy in my mind. The thing that sticks in my mind is that he was able to track length of services. Like he knows, this economist knows how long you were in that church building or how long you were in that mosque, and so he was able to rank who has the longest services. And I think Mormons had very long services, and then Eastern Orthodox had like very long liturgies. And that happened to me. I used to excavate in Athens, and I went to a few Greek Orthodox services, and I would show up right when it starts. But most people kind of roll in for the Eucharist. And so I was like, wow, this is not well attended. It's just like me and two other people. And then like everyone rolls in for the actual Eucharist. I'm like, that's why these services seem so long, because like me and like two other people showed up right when it started.
They just roll in as they know the schedule itself.
Yeah,
it opens a
exactly.
whole other different question. The survey itself, or maybe not the survey, but the data collection, which maybe is not so religiously connected, but just in where that kind of cell phone data goes, which is a world of different problems, maybe outside of your exact concerns, having to do with your things. But the moments in your mind where you're like, if this economist can get our cell phone data just to see how long we're in a building and where.
In terms of like privacy and data privacy, as I was reading the study, I was like, ooh, this is uncomfortable, but it's interesting. It's interesting data. But like,
and I'm sure someone has a problem as well with it being connected to like religion. And then, well, what is the comfort in getting this kind of data on people to check their own? It's a weird one, but it is, one of these things. When you're talking about Constantine, I was just like, this sets up perfectly, because he feels like one of those people that everyone's like, you're a liar. You didn't really convert. You didn't really have this thing. Or the like, nope, it happened. This is, it's just so split.
I mean, for Constantine, he just seemed to care too much for it to be like a total lie. Like this is always tricky because it's very a Protestant way of thinking too. Like, how sincere are you really? Like, let me peer into your psychology. How sincere are you about your faith? Do you really believe in Jesus Christ? And like, so I get that it's kind of a Protestant bias to care about like what's going on inside your cognitive assent to certain truth claims. But he seems to care so much. He cares so much about the church debates. He seemed to care so much about this Sol Invictus, that like I think there must have been some change of heart, as it were. So I I believe that he had some sort of conversion experience, but yeah, he was also an emperor trying to hold together an empire.
Yeah, the power dynamics always make things a little complicated, but don't preclude a
Yeah,
belief from
and
being
to
real.
pivot back to the cell phone study too, like the study. Speaking of Protestantism, like it's kind of a inherently Christianizing kind of study because it's focusing on like attendance to a service, and of course other religions, Judaism, Islam, like also you attend some sort of gathering, but so many
Hmm.
religions are just not very congregational. Like I've been doing an
Right.
ongoing Taoism series on the channel, and if you're a Chinese person attending a Taoist, going to a Taoist temple in China, you probably don't even self-identify as Taoist. Like the people who call themselves Taoist are like the actual priests. You would go to the temple, light some incense, maybe go there for a festival, but it's not really a congregational religion. It's just something it's just not the same as like attending an evangelical worship service, for example. So the study itself is like inherently biased toward religions that have those sorts of congregational gatherings. But it was a study on Americans, and in the United
Hmm.
States is a
Hmm.
Christian majority country, so like the data is still very useful, even though I think it is skewed. It probably people that we would call religious still probably fall through the gaps because it is so focused on going to a particular building on a particular day, when some religions and many spiritual but not religious people like aren't going to a particular building on a particular day. So there is kind of a inherent bias to the study as well.
Yeah, there's difficulties, maybe not the most transferable of forms across all
Cultural
places.
context. Yeah.
Or yeah, I guess it something that came up in that I had a little bit further down the list, but I want to just ask now because we're talking about some of this, a desire to report or social desire to report or fear of not, if you are an atheist or not saying that you are atheist. Is there something about our brains that
Mm.
craves this belief, whether it is, Constantine believing that he saw this or our desire to believe that he did or not believe that he did, which is a different kind of belief itself? Like, is there something hardwired in us that makes us pursue that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, this is a question that's best answered by a cognitive science. Like the cognitive science of religion is a thriving subfield of religious studies, and I'm good friends with several people who are in that subfield. So, you know, chatting over beers, I've like heard them talk about the research, but like this, I'm not an expert in this. But from what I've read, the cognitive scientists would say like what we call religion is a byproduct in some respect of normal brain functions. So for example, there's something called the hyperactive agency detection device, HADD, hyperactive agency. And this is the whole concept that as we were evolving as a species back 100, 200, 300,000 years ago, it was better to be hyperactively aware of things around us in such a sense that like it, to avoid being predated, to avoid being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Because if you are hyperactively aware, like, oh my gosh, I think that's a saber-toothed tiger, but it's not, that's fine. But if you are not aware enough and you don't notice that you're about to get pounced on by a lion, then you're dead and your genes do not get propagated to the next generation. So we are evolutionarily predisposed to be hyperactively aware of agency in our environment, so to avoid being eaten by predators. And so cognitive scientists of religion have argued that this hyperactive agency detection in our brains may have been religion might be a byproduct of that, where we are constantly, oh wow, like that thing just rustled in the woods. I don't know what it is, but it might be some invisible agent. I'm going to call that invisible agent, what have you, a god, a fairy, a demon, some sort of non-obvious being. Cognitive scientists have this term non-obvious being, and I think it's so great. It's better than like supernatural being, because like supernatural implies
Non-obvious being.
like supernatural implies it's like outside of nature, but so much of religion, for these beings, whether it's a demon or a jinn or an angel, they are in nature. They live in that grove over there. They live in that stream over there. It's like so much of ancient or late Roman demonology and angelology, like angels and demons live in particular places, particular streams, mountains, groves. So they like this phrase non-obvious. So like you can't really see it, but like I'm hyperactively aware of agency, and I think whatever happened there was because of that. So that's one component where they would say what we call religion is in some respects a byproduct of normal human brain function being co-opted or you know, like an unexpected byproduct. So the hyperactive agency detection keeps us from being predated, being eaten by a bear, but also it helps us think about invisible beings everywhere. And oh my gosh, we need to be aware of these invisible beings and what they're doing to us and our environment. And are they watching over me? Should I act more moral? And so there's this whole argument about big gods, how civilization kind of evolved alongside the idea of big gods, gods that are kind of numinous and care about our morals and care about us, you know, living in society, as opposed to a more capricious, small god who lives in nature and might be a trickster and doesn't really care if you're a trickster as well. Dr. Noren Zion, I forget his first name. Noren Zion is kind of the guy who wrote the Big Gods book, and that's the one evolutionary, what we call like cognitive evolutionary science theories.
It's just so odd there's so many parts of it that you're like, I wish I could understand. And yet at points you're like, you run into a term and you're like, this is fantastic and I love it and it helps me understand. And yet I feel like I get the name and I don't really get what's behind it.
I mean, so much of this, so I will say so much of this is very controversial. So Noren Zion's book like prompted a whole multi-year battle. And, you know, so much of this is not like testable in an experimental, right. You can't really like, it's very difficult to test these things because you're talking about some sort of maybe other hominid species in like 500,000 BC. Like we're not necessarily even talking about Homo sapiens here. So it's I don't want to say speculative, but it's like it's a type of science that is very much, you know, you're using like modern neuroscience to try to understand hominids 500,000 years ago, or maybe Homo sapiens 100,000 years ago. So it is very controversial. It's an emerging field, and some more like traditionally trained religious studies scholars kind of poo-poo it, like, oh, you guys are, reviving old theories that have been debunked. And I don't know if that's super fair. A lot of it's just not understanding cognitive science. For example, I published a recent video on dreams. There was a scholar called E.B. Tyler back in the late 1800s and early 1900s who said like the origin of religion is like primitive people mistaking their dreams as talking to ancestors and gods. And it's a racist study. It's armchair anthropology. He never once went into the actual field to like interview people. So his study has been completely debunked. But dream research in the last 10, 15 years has really made a big leaps and strides, including these massive dream databases where you can kind of study patterns in people's dreams and see how culturally informed they are. Dreams change depending on gender, culture, religion. So here to find out that like people dream about supernatural agents, and we happen to think people are more likely to think a dream is religious if it's a low agency dream where you yourself are not the actor and you're being acted upon by some other being. And so scholars, a lot of cognitive scientists of religion have argued that like dreams have been a source of creativity for religion over all of human history, like inspiring new rituals, inspiring new beliefs. You think you're interacting with your ancestors or gods. And so they would say E.B. Tyler was wrong when he said it was the origin of religion, but like maybe he was like partially onto something by thinking of dreams as kind of a source for inspiration for God concepts. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the direction of dream research. And I think other scholars in my corner would be like, oh, well, this is just reviving E.B. Tyler's debunked theory. So there's, again, a lot of debate, but I think it would be silly to ignore dreams as a major source of religious inspiration. When you look at every single religion in the world, dreams always play a role, whether it's the prophet Daniel interpreting dreams, or Joseph and the Virgin Mary, like the whole Christmas story has dreams everywhere. So obviously mm-hmm. dreams are massively important in every single religious tradition. Whether or not we call it the origin of religion, though, or how much it's inspiring new beliefs and rituals, that could be the debate.
Can I pause before we jump onto some more questions? Because I think this sets up perfectly the wide, wide world of religion and debates in the study of religion and different ways this can go. People know you from your videos for Religion for Breakfast, but you are starting an all new venture that is going to continue and expand that field, the religion department. So before we get to more of my questions, can we pause for a moment to ask, what is the religion department? What can people expect? Who should be turning there? What kind of stuff is going to be covered there?
Sure. Like on any university campus that has a religious studies department, it is the hub for the study of religion. It's where you take classes. It's where you major in religion. There's professors there that teach Buddhism and Christianity and classical Sanskrit and cognitive science of religion. And Religion for Breakfast, I've been doing this for 15 years at this point. There's only so much you can do in a video. It is me talking at the camera, talking to you, and it's also just me. But behind every single Religion for Breakfast videos is dozens of scholars who have published the research, wrote the monographs, wrote the articles on that topic. And I wanted to offer something more than what a YouTube video can do. So me and my co-founder, Andrew Agapor, who's a scholar of religion and science, we were starting this venture called the Religion Department, which is kind of the more seminar-based, class-based, online class-based ancillary to Religion for Breakfast, where if you want to take a class on Intro to Ancient Coptic, which is the final stage of the ancient Egyptian language, you can do that. So we have a professor of Coptic teaching an 8-week Intro to Coptic class, Dr. Lydia Bramer McCollum. If you want to study, Buddhism or American paranormal beliefs, we're offering seminars, we're offering guest lectures, we're offering guided reading groups where you kind of go through tough texts. Scholars from every corner of religious studies. And it's a platform where you can join this community, join some classes, talk about religion, learn about religion from world-class scholars. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at is more than just a YouTube video, but something that you can join in as like an online learning platform.
And it's covering the gamut of options, like all the things you might be thinking of topically. And as far as religions, like the diversity of that is the pursuit of this, like fully a religion department going into all different lanes. I mean,
I've sometimes have thought, I'm jealous of your channel, which is focusing on the Bible and archaeology. Like it's kind of, there's a narrow focus chronologically and geographically. And when I first started Religion for Breakfast, it's called Religion for Breakfast. And that's everything. That's Buddhism, Hinduism, that's Shinto, that's Taoism, that's indigenous religion. And I sometimes think I made a mistake by making it so broad. But that's what we're trying to do. A religion department at a university has a scholar of Buddhism under the same roof as a scholar of indigenous religion, under the same roof as a psychologist of religion. So like the field of religious studies is just so incredibly diverse. And so we just launched, so we're trying to build out our curriculum, but we have Dr. Donald Lopez Jr., who's a world-class Buddhism scholar. He's giving a lecture on his new book on the Buddha. We have scholars of Hinduism and Islam teaching lectures on these various traditions. So we're trying to do it all. It's our first semester starting. We have a very eager group of students. We did our Intro to Coptic class ran over the summer, and it was such a huge hit. Everybody, I mean, how many? There's only so many universities in the world that teach Coptic, and so to be able to offer Coptic at an affordable rate to get you reading the Nag Hammadi codices is just super exciting. We offer New Testament Greek the semester before that. So yeah, we have 8-week seminars. We also have one-off lectures. So Dr. Lopez will be teaching a one-time lecture on his book. And then we do guided reading groups. So we pick a really tough text that you might need some help to get through. We're starting with, it's just out of reach, but we're starting with like a theory and method book called Religion in 50 Words. So, ritual, religion, sacred, scripture, and we just like pick a word every week. And I'm leading the first guided reading group, and we just kind of go through the chapter and talk about it. But I can envision futures where we'll have like somebody leading you through the Lotus Sutra or the Vedas or the Book of Enoch. Pick a tough text and have a scholarly expert guide you through it. Yeah, so it's kind of our more academic venture, where Religion for Breakfast sets the groundwork, lays the groundwork as educational explainer videos. But if you want to go deeper with an expert, come over to the religiondepartment.com to take a class.
There's a link down in the description if you are interested in learning more. I do think it's a wonderful spread, like the ability to dive deep into some of those. Yeah, we're going to walk through this text slowly, get the overviews, get the individual lectures, and have the full spread of things. Because for so many people, right, the university system is out of reach. It's not where you are. It doesn't align with your work schedule. So the ability to join in with something like this, I think it's a fantastic addition, as you said, to what you're already doing. You're not going anywhere. Religion for Breakfast isn't going anywhere. So don't hear this and panic and think that's disappearing. As you said, it's a next step that you can take.
And it's not meant to replace actual religious studies departments. Like I went to Boston University for my PhD program. The religion department there is this amazing institution with scholars and classes and majors and PhD students. Like, we're not offering like fake degrees or anything like that. It's more like, are you like super into religious studies and you want to spend like your next 8 weeks diving deep into the archaeology of the Hebrew Bible? Well, you can do that. And it's meant to kind of fill that gap where maybe you don't have the time, you're a full-time worker, you don't want to just go join a master's program in the Hebrew Bible. But if you want to take 8 weeks out of your schedule and go learn deeply about the archaeology of the Hebrew Bible, which is one of our seminars this semester, you can do that. So that's kind of the niche we're trying to serve.
If you're watching this video, I feel like this is probably the kind of thing you are interested in. So go and check it out. The Religion Department, there's a link on screen. There's a link in the description. You know all the places to go and look, but I'd highly recommend checking it out, jumping in whenever you're watching this, whether you're watching this right when it comes out or in the future. Dive in. There's something great there for you. If I can do a hard gear change off of that immediately back into a question that I think, again, I feel like these are all tying in so well with your answers, as it's like it's
all religion. I mean, it's just
as you're planning all these things together and saying that people are maybe more atheist than they might express or more agnostic than they might express. Do we know when, can we put our finger on when that emerges as something identifiable outside of when people identify, which is its own problem? When do religious systems emerge? Can we say something about when those systems of being either atheist or being agnostic are identifiable themselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a great answer to it. I know there have been studies done on ancient atheism. So atheism in the ancient world. I think his name's Dr. Whitehouse. There's a recent book on ancient atheism. The short answer is there are ancient philosophers, if you read closely, where they express ideas that would come close to what we would think of as atheism, or at least agnosticism here in the 21st century. Atheism can be defined in several ways. It's atheos, without God, or the lack of God. So it's usually, in the strictest sense, defined as the lack of belief in a God or gods. But then you can break it down to what's called positive or negative atheism, or strong or weak atheism. The positive atheism would be like a strong cognitive assent there, or cognitive claim that there is no God, and I believe there is no God. And the negative atheism would just be the lack of even thinking about it. Like, you can go through your day and just not even think about the concept of God, and therefore are you just an atheist going through your day until you think that there is a God? So there's kind of strong and weak senses here. But there are a few philosophers. I mean, it's been a while since I've read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, but he has at least one or two passages where he expresses some cynical positions on the gods, where if the gods even exist. So he entertains the concept that gods might not exist. And then there's this one philosopher, I think his name is Pyrrho, or Pyrrhonism, where Hellenistic Greek philosopher who potentially interacted with Buddhist thinkers. There's a lot of arguments over there's a Greco-Buddhist stream of thought, where he seems to has channel an idea that's from I forget the Buddhist philosopher, but the concept of no self, that there's no creator being, and that could be closer to agnosticism, but that could be atheistic. So like, it's not like, the long and the short of it is it's not like it was invented in the 1700s or the 1800s with the Enlightenment.
Right.
I think there are philosophers that seem to have hit upon the concept of no gods in antiquity. And of course, I just know the Mediterranean world. I don't know that my research has not gone outside of that. But to go back to cognitive science, one of the episodes I'm writing right now is titled "Are Babies Born Atheist?" which just like sounds silly. And YouTube's definitely going to demonetize it because I have to find like paintings of babies because you can't show kids
Yes.
on YouTube. And so I think it's Jacob Barrett. There's a cognitive scientist who wrote a book basically on like babies and atheism. And going back to your initial question, are humans born predisposed for theism? And he kind of makes the argument, yes, that humans with the hyperactive agency detection and also like an innate sense of physics, like we kind of know how physics should work, I forget the exact argument, but like our understanding of how physics should work would lend us to believe in theism of like some sort of ordered universe. I have to read the book again, but he makes this argument that like, if babies are born functionally negative atheists because they cannot think of the concept of God, so they're born negative atheists, but they are born predisposed to theism because of these cognitive systems. So you could say theism existed from the start of the human species.
That's
if you
very
go with the whole
interesting.
Babies are born atheist.
Yeah, it's such an interesting overlap of some of the same things of like, yeah, are we prone to being believing and the social pressures of participating in a system built in and added on to like our mental desires or systems of believing and like the pattern seekingness that we have. And I want things to be orderly, or my brain does, in addition to it being, hyperactive in some ways.
I'm looking at my notes now because I was writing the script pretty recently. So it was Justin Barrett, and he has this concept, eager agent detectors. He doesn't use the word hyperactive, eager agent detectors. Like we want to detect agency in our universe. We want to attribute human-like intentionality to non-human things. So if
another great
branch,
term to have in your pocket.
Exactly. So like if a tree branch falls in the forest, you want to be like, oh, that was caused by some sort of agent, because the idea that it was just blown over by the wind is kind of boring. Like we want agency. Yeah. So he's like, baby scientists have found that even very young babies, even around 5 months old, have a surprisingly good grasp of how the physical world works. And so this kind of goes into this concept of naive physics or intuitive understanding of physical properties. And this leads into the whole idea that humans evolved this brain function to kind of operate in the world. And he makes this whole argument how this lays the groundwork for theism.
Well, there you go. Now you're getting a spoiler for not just the religion department, but also for upcoming videos.
An upcoming video.
I mean, I had never thought about that. Yeah, like do babies come with a built-in system? But if you have that hyperactive or the desire to identify something.
It raises interesting questions. Like when you think about positive and negative atheism, if positive atheism is like this belief in your mind, I do not believe in a God, does that mean you're like constantly shifting in and out of negative and positive atheism? Or if you're a Christian that believes in a God, are you, when you go through your day, you go play pickleball or you play Super Smash Brothers and you're not thinking about God, do you shift into negative atheism because you're not thinking about the concept of God? Like this is probably pedantic, but I just find that very interesting. If atheism is just so tied to the cognitive assent to a truth claim, if you're not thinking about that truth claim, how much is the term actually salient?
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody has written about that, but I find it very...
and I'm sure there's also someone in the comments going, it doesn't matter. Like, and those are the points people go, scholars are quibbling and nobody really cares. But also there's so much baggage that gets put onto those claims of being that or being called that, depending on your community and your traditions, right? There can be real weight in there. And places like that, well, yeah, but if you're using this as a system, are we all a part of this at different points in the day is a very different way to try to think about how that matters or does it matter. If your cell phone's not with you at church, did you really go to church? That scientist, the economics professor might say no, but the systems just get a little complicated when you move to the wide world of religion wholesale and all of the messy things that come into that.
So there's this other term. So the neuroscientist Deborah Kellerman coined this phrase promiscuous teleology. So the Greek word telos, it means like purpose or goal. So teleological thinking or reasoning would be thinking in the sense of something that has a purpose. And so she interviewed young kids. So we're talking ages 4 to 5. And she found that kids have an extremely strong teleology, where they would say that the sun exists for heating the earth and water exists for the purpose of drinking. And if you were more like dispassionate scientific thinker, you might be like, oh, well, the sun is just a ball of helium and hydrogen that kind of just, exists, and it pulls its mass together and creates this nuclear fusion. And you could kind of make it not very teleological. But for kids, it's like, well, no, the sun is for heating the earth, and water is for drinking. And she argues that this teleological thinking also leads to theism, where we're like, humans exist for a purpose, and that purpose is blank. And so we kind of fill in the blank of our teleological thinking. So the whole book, Justin Barrett is the scholar. So if you want to look him up, he has he brings together several streams of normal brain functions that we have that all kind of push in the direction toward theism.
If I can throw one last question at you before we go, and I'm going to take one name off the list because you already talked about him and we know you would want him to be here. But if we give you our stock standard, you're having a dinner party style of question, but you have to pick 3 guests, a guest from different time periods, different regions, in any way you want related to the things that you do. Who would you want to be with? Constantine is maybe in the kitchen working, so he's not available to come and help right now at the dinner party. Who are the 3 that you want?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say the very obvious one, and then I'm gonna try to think of a very deep cut as I say the very obvious ones. The obvious one is Jesus. Like, come on. If I could go interview Jesus, I could revolutionize the world. All this debate about the historical Jesus, like what the apocalyptic preacher, trying to read between the lines of the Gospels, what actually goes back to Jesus, what is from oral tradition, what is invented by Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John. My word, like it would just be insanely interesting. Jesus, are you literate? Do you know Greek? Luke, the Gospel of Luke says you pick up a scroll and just start reading from Isaiah. So do you know Hebrew? Because there's debates about whether you know Greek or Hebrew, because we just thought you were Aramaic. Like, how educated are you? Did you go to Jerusalem a lot, or was it just for your last week of life? Because John says you go there a lot, and the synoptics say you kind of spent most of your time in the Galilee. It would just, the questions would be endless. Like it would be incredible. So that would definitely be top of my list. Deeper cut, I'm thinking maybe the prophet Mani from Manichaeism.
All right.
Manichaeism,
definitely a deeper cut.
Everyone should go watch my video, Manichaeism. It's just such an interesting religion. Like, when you think about, I love those alternate history YouTube channels where they're like, if this little quirk of history happened, who knows what would have happened? Who would have won World War I, or who would have won, the Spartans versus the Persians? Manichaeism could have been the global religion, and it's Christianity right now, and Islam is big too. But like, Manichaeism was this Silk Road religion stretching from China to Europe into Africa. We have papyri fragments from Egypt of Manichaean hymns and writings and sermons. And it all goes back to this guy, Mani, who was living in, what is now Iraq, and the kind of the marshy Mesopotamian regions of Iraq. And he probably was raised some type of Christian or in some sort of baptizing community, and then believed, became this prophet where he kind of created this more universalist religion where people called him the Buddha and Zoroaster and Jesus, or an apostle, all at the same time. He kind of like argued that like all religions have some sort of claim to truth, and it hung on for many, many years into the medieval period. Like, there were Manichaeans in China until like the 1200s. And I just want to interview this guy too. Like, because he also had this vision that kind of got him started as a prophet. Like, what did you see? What do you really think, Manichaeism is all about? Because just like so many prophets, he was, mythologized and kind of
Right.
became larger than life. And it was just such a large, it was the geographical spread. Like, I'm sure there were like major differences between the Manichaeans in Kelis, Egypt versus China. And like, what did they believe? Or were they teaching the same thing you taught, Mani? In the same way you could ask Jesus, like, was the Apostle Paul really onto something, or would you think he's wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus meet Mani, Mani meet Jesus. I have some questions for you, but you probably have some questions for each other about what you
I think more
about,
interestingly, having Jesus meet Paul and see him. I guess according to Acts they meant.
Yes.
But
Yep. Yeah.
I've always thought that if Paul walked into a Christian church today, he'd be very confused what's going on. Like, oh, what's this? Wait, my letter to Philemon is now sacred scripture? Like, what? I don't know if he would be flattered because he seems to kind of like was very confident in his own abilities kind of guy, or would he be scandalized? Like, why did that? Why is my letter to Philemon considered sacred scripture? We could add him as a fourth figure to interview, because I would be curious, because the letters he wrote were what we would call occasional letters. He wrote them for a specific occasion, for a specific community, and I think he would be like either tickled or a little baffled by some of these occasional letters that made it into the New Testament canon.
Yeah, and depending on how you feel about some scholars' positions on, the Gospels' knowledge of Paul, he might have some questions about, well, what are they doing with some of what I said or what I didn't say, and how am I showing up and not getting credit? And then everyone's interesting. Paul might be hanging out on the patio for the after dinner drinks. He can join into the mix to start a whole other fight. So you got one seat left because we kicked Paul out onto the porch. Who's number 3?
Oh man, let's see here. I'm trying to think of another deep cut, because my first thoughts is to go to someone like the Buddha, because people argue about the historical Buddha as well. Okay, let's see. Deep cut. I'm trying to think of early church theologian. Oh, this is a good one. Celsus. So in the book Contra Celsus, Origin of Alexandria, so this Alexandrian Christian theologian writes this rebuttal to this Greek philosopher Celsus, who apparently wrote a anti-Christian screed that like attempted to debunk Christianity. And we only know about Celsus because Origen came and wrote a book called Contra Celsus, so against Celsus, and he quotes extensively from Celsus. He basically copy and pastes a big paragraph of Celsus where Celsus says Jesus is a magician, Jesus is full of demons and is doing trickery, and then Origen would write a big paragraph rebuttal. Oh, this is where Celsus is wrong. And scholars have spent a lot of time trying to parse, okay, what words are Celsus's words and which words are Origen's? And the scholar Dr. David Litwa recently published like an edition of Celsus, trying to parse between which texts are Celsus and which are Origen. And I just want to talk to Celsus. Like, why are you so pissed off about Christianity? Like, tell me about it. Like,
are these quotes accurate?
Because Origen's only quoting parts of the book. So like, what else did you write? Give me your full copy. Give me your full argument. And also, like, we could learn a lot about the Christianization of the Roman Empire, because Origen's writing in the 200s, so maybe Celsus was writing in the late 100s. So it's pretty early. We're talking 100 years after the book of John, Gospel of John. So like, Christianity is still pretty new. The Roman Empire is still probably overwhelmingly non-Christian. We're talking Christianity is probably this minority of minorities, but it was a big enough deal that it caught Celsus's attention, and he was like, I need to write a rebuttal. And I just find that fascinating. I want to know why it bothered him so much. What is it about Christianity that he found so incensing that he had to respond to it? So that would be a very interesting conversation.
You have those 3, and you can throw Paul and Constantine in, and that is quite a dinner group for conversations. Yep. Certainly no debates would take place between any of those persons.
Some of them are too cliche. I mean, Jesus, Paul, and Constantine, but I was like, Mani and Celsus, let's throw them in there as well.
I think it's a good mix. It feels like a very interesting, a group that might say yes to coming in for the conversation. Dr. Andrew Mark Henry, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk. I am so happy for your new project, the Religion Department. I think it's a wonderful addition to the world of the internet. And while there's a lot of bad education, there's also a lot of good education there. Thank you for participating in that and making this available to people who are interested in more. I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful project.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If anybody wants to check it out, it's religiondepartment.com. You can become a member. We have annual memberships, and that gets you access to all of our guest lectures, our guided reading group with me, and members get a big discount on all of our seminars. And we have Hebrew Bible, Historical Jesus, and Intro to Coptic. I think those are the three that would most interest the folks in your audience.
There's a wider range of array of things. If you're interested, go and check it out. There's a link in the description. There's going to be a link on screen somewhere floating around at this time as well. So go check it out. Go over, do what you need to do. Andrew, thank you so much. I love talking to you. It's great to be able to pick your brain. If you have your own kind of questions, you know where to go in order to be able to get access to some people to pick their brains. But for this week, that's all we have. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you find us. It helps us. Hopefully it helps you stay in touch with us. But for this week, for everyone here at Bible and Archaeology, until next time.